It is my honor to welcome you to the 2024 commencement ceremony for the Geisinger School of Medical Laboratory Science. My name is Mary Dacey, and I have the privilege of serving as the Program Medical Director. Today, we are celebrating not only our graduates, but also a new chapter in Geisinger's legacy of excellence in laboratory science. To the families and friends of our graduates, Kendra Smith and Anthony Nguyen, thank you for your support and belief in them. I'd like to acknowledge our esteemed laboratory leadership, Diana Kremitske, Dr. Myra Wilkerson, and Matt Van Leeuwe, as well as our keynote speaker, Alyssa Passament. Your dedication to advancing laboratory medicine inspires us all. To our exceptional faculty, Marianne Downs, Christine Perillo, Amalia Early, Rhiannon Sutliff, and Julia Bell, thank you for upholding Abigail Geisinger's vision to make my hospital right, make it the best. Your mentorship has shaped not just the knowledge, but the character of our graduates. On a personal note, after 14 years now in laboratory medicine, I can easily recognize the voice of an experienced lab tech when I call in with urgent questions or walk over to the lab before I get to know them or know them personally. They're multitasking, they're patient with me, but they're generally urging me to get to the point. When I call in with my questions, they are composed and self-assured. Over the past year, I've begun to hear that same tone in Anthony and Kendra's voices, a sign of their growth and readiness. Thank you also to those experienced lab techs I was just referring to, who have guided them during their clinical rotations. Your experience and expertise are invaluable in their journey. Kendra and Anthony, today marks the culmination of your hard work, resilience, and dedication. As you join our field, you carry forward Geisinger's proud traditions and the promise of a bright future in medical laboratory science. Congratulations. And I will welcome Diana Kremitske, Vice President of Laboratory Services, to provide opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Dacey. Good afternoon and welcome, family, friends, colleagues, to the graduation of Geisinger's 2024 class of medical laboratory scientists. Has a nice ring, doesn't it? Medical laboratory scientists. And congratulations to our students, Anthony and Kendra, on your accomplishment of completing a rigorous course of study and clinical experience. The mission of the Geisinger Medical Laboratory Science School is to recruit, educate, and prepare highly competent medical laboratory scientists to serve their patients in the healthcare profession while demonstrating high ethical standards. In addition to the training our students have received to develop the necessary skills to perform laboratory testing, the training and mentoring they have received by skilled professionals in our laboratory has prepared them to practice good judgment when evaluating test results and specimen pre-analytical variables. Also, the ability to relate to people, a capacity for calm and reasoned judgment, and a demonstration of commitment to patient safety are essential qualities both Kendra and Anthony possess. Our MLS training program is deeply tied to our organizational value of learning because we are sharing our knowledge to build a future workforce. And we are fully utilizing internal laboratory expertise in producing skilled medical laboratory scientists who will have a career in service to healthcare, which has many benefits to our communities. We are so very fortunate to have the support of the health system to restart this training program. A couple of statistics here. Our nation has significant workforce shortages of medical laboratory scientists in many regions, including the Northeast region of the United States. About 50 years ago, in 1975, there were a little over 700 accredited training programs across the United States. Now there are roughly 240 accredited MLS training programs nationwide, yet the demand for laboratory diagnostics is increasing with the aging population. Here at Geisinger and within our laboratory, we step forward and we're mitigating these challenges and investing in the future of the workforce through this clinical training program. We are committed to this program and further demonstrate a shared commitment to educating the future workforce by announcing tonight that we are planning to start a Geisinger Foundation Fund in 2025 for the purposes of supporting scholarships for deserving students admitted to our program. The timeline to open our School of Medical Laboratory Science began in 2022 when a business plan was approved with the help of Matt to reopen the program. Right after that, we started recruiting for our program director, and Dr. Marianne Downs joined our team in January of 2023. Soon after, the faculty were selected, Julia, Amelia, Rhiannon, and Chris. The team went to work right away, and we are ready to reopen the program in January of this year. To accomplish all of this in 1 year is really, really, truly remarkable, and I'd really like to give a round of applause to Marianne and the faculty. So here we are now celebrating our first graduating class at the completion of 11 months of training in the laboratory and classroom instruction. Thank you to everyone who contributed your time and talent or supported us in any way to make this day a reality. In closing, I would really like to offer a brief reflection on the impact that a medical laboratory scientist has on healthcare. The medical laboratory scientist touches the lives of many patients every day, every hour, every minute. We do this through the millions, perhaps even billions of tests throughout the country as we produce diagnostic information every year. The medical laboratory scientist is there on the front lines of detecting a new infectious disease or emergence of known pathogens, provides diagnostic monitoring of acute and chronic diseases, discovers abnormalities through laboratory testing, which provide insights to the physician to diagnose or inform diagnoses, evaluates critical test results that trigger an immediate treatment. Medical laboratory scientists help to develop new tests for cancer diagnostics. They validate new analyzers so that testing is at the highest standards of performance. They devise and implement testing algorithms that support evidence-based treatment guidelines. They provide drug monitoring test results to help clinicians set the right therapeutic levels for the patient. And they perform and interpret the cross-match for transfusion to provide life-saving blood products and that they can be safely administered. These are just some facets of the role of the medical laboratory scientist, truly an essential member of the healthcare team. What an impactful career, an amazing contribution to healthcare and our communities. Today we celebrate Anthony and Kendra, who are starting this career in this very vital work. Congratulations. At this time, I would like to introduce our Chief Administrative Officer of Hospital Services and Population Health, Matt Van Leeuwe, who would like to share a few words.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay, or is the mic warranted?
It is for the videography.
For the via? Okay, someone might have to help me turn this on. Got it. Can you hear me now? Great. Well, I will be brief. I know there's a lot of folks here tonight, and just want to, again, acknowledge the graduates and recognize that tonight really is a culmination of a lot of work. This has been, I think Diana mentioned it, about 2 years in the making since we first sat down and thought about reopening this program. And so congratulations on getting to this point. And thank you to all of you in the room who have supported this and will continue to support it as we move forward. I can tell you from a system perspective, the laboratory is a very critical part of what we do. There's not a patient that comes through one of our hospitals, one of our clinics, that doesn't get touched by the lab in some way, shape, or form. In fact, on an annual basis, every year the volume through the lab increases somewhere between 5 to 7%, millions and millions of samples. And I've had the ability to work at several different organizations. I trained at Parkland in Dallas. I've worked for UC Davis in Sacramento. And when I got here and learned the volume and the quality of the work that's being done in our lab, I was astonished. This lab really is a top-notch lab. And I don't know that we celebrate that enough. But you're joining a really great team, does really great work. We have a lot of plans for the lab in the next couple of years to leverage the great work that you're all doing and the expertise that you bring to the table. So again, just thank you to everyone who's been involved with the program. Thank you for Diana, Dr. Wilkerson, and others for bringing this forward so that we could get to where we are today, and really look forward to seeing this program continue to grow and continue to bring value to the organization. So thank you for having me.
Hello, and for those who don't know me, I am Marianne Downs, the program director. I do not have an MD. I am an MLS. Very proud to be one, and I am so happy to have been here to start this program and this class. I'm also so excitedly happy to be able to introduce our commencement speaker, somebody who inspired me in my very first year as a medical laboratory scientist, as we are the ones who get things done. We know what is right, we know patient care, we know what's necessary, and we do know when to speak up to say, hold on, I'm very concerned about these results. This is hemolyzed, this looks like it might have been collected in the wrong anticoagulant. We know when something's wrong, and we're the ones who are that line to do that work. And quite honestly, it was certainly Alyssa Passament who was one of those who championed and has been championing throughout her entire career for the laboratory. And I know our students have already heard her speak about the value of laboratory medicine and quality and what is necessary for that. And so with that, I'm happy to introduce Alyssa Passament. And as always, being safety-minded, we also do what needs to get done.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for allowing me to be here and to speak to you at this very, very important milestone for Anthony and Kendra. I am so excited to welcome you to the profession. Our profession, your profession now, is a remarkable one that is not understood by many folks and not necessarily appreciated by many of our colleagues. But we are, as has already been stated numerous times, essential to the provision of healthcare in this country and in the world. We are essential to providing the services and meeting the mission of every other healthcare provider, that is to do no harm. You are the science of the art of medicine and healthcare. That is the way, that is the niche that we fill. Healthcare is very, very complicated. To do it right requires a great deal of information and education and training on our part so that we can provide the information and the services that are needed for the patient-facing providers. Our colleagues then use that information and their education and training, and frankly, some intuition, and that's the art part of medicine, whether folks like it or not. And I know a lot of physicians don't necessarily agree with it, but it is part of the art. Because when they see patients, those patients did not read the books. They don't know how they're supposed to present. They also don't know how they're supposed to react to the treatments, and what works or doesn't work depends on the science that we bring to the table. Providing our information is very complicated. As was already mentioned, we do so many things. It is a remarkable balancing act. We balance the manual skills that we need to perform tests accurately with the intellectual knowledge that we need to make sure that those laboratory values correlate to whatever is going on with the patient. At the same time, paying attention to the necessary detail to implement our quality management systems, which, by the way, without, we cannot be certain that we are providing the right information to our patients and to their caregivers. We are still the only ones who can tell an infectious disease practitioner what is really wrong with their patient. Without our information, ID can only conjecture as to what's causing the infection and why the antibiotic is or isn't working. We are the first ones to know what is wrong with the person that presents in the primary care doc's office or even an oncologist's office. In my practice, one time we did a CBC on a patient that we were told wasn't feeling well, pale, a little tired, that kind of thing, okay? So we ran the CBC, and there was an increase in lymphs. Oh, okay, we know where we're going with this, we thought. We look under the microscope, and we see hairy cells. And we're like, wait a second. That doesn't really exist, right? I mean, that's something we saw in the Atlas books. Nobody's ever seen hairy cells. And sure enough, we went back to the books, make sure we weren't crazy. Then we ran to our pathologists and showed the slides to them to make sure that they didn't think we were crazy. And they said, no, you're not crazy. And yes, this person has a very rare leukemia called hairy cell leukemia. And we contacted the physician, who was stunned because what he was expecting was low hematocrit and hemoglobin and maybe like iron deficiency anemia. So we never know what we're going to find, but what we find is what determines what happens next to this patient. And with this patient, it was actually, believe it or not, good news, because hairy cell leukemia is very survivable. Remember, without you and your services, mom and the doc do not know why the baby has a fever or why the baby is lethargic. We're the ones who can read the baby's blood cells, perform the microbiology or antibody testing to give at least a plausible answer to what's going on. And without our colleagues in pathology, there is no way to know what the lump or the lesion or the growth is that has been detected by the physician or the caregiver. Having sat with many, many friend and relative waiting for a path report, I can promise you that it is incredibly vital that that information is received in a timely fashion. Your services, our services, clinical and anatomic, properly ordered and interpreted, along with the services of the rest of the healthcare team, including diagnostic imaging, et cetera, can change outcomes, can make the difference between trial and error medicine and evidence-based medicine. This is an incredible responsibility that you're assuming and will share with all of us in the laboratory. You have spent a great deal of time learning what specimens are most appropriate for whatever is being required. And sometimes they're pretty icky specimens, you know, and your parents are probably wondering, I can't believe she touched that or he touched that, given that they won't take the garbage out. We also learned how to perform some tests. Who knew the stuff that you grew in the dishes left in your room for a month was the start of a mycology laboratory? It certainly was the case in my household with my son. How to ensure that laboratory tests are accurate and precise, which is the goal of our quality control, and then how to correlate these results with disease. Your time here at Geisinger was a culmination of a heavy science curriculum from college, one that is not for the faint of heart. In fact, students of mine who have gone on to medical school have told me that the first year of medical school is a repeat. That the only thing that they really kind of felt was new was pharmacology and maybe anatomy, depending on where they went to school. But the rest of it, they already knew because they were MLS students and MLS practitioners. And while You learned a great deal here. Each of you teaches those of us in the profession too. Your questions keep us sharp. They require us to sometimes actually do research to see whether or not we know what we're talking about, and require us also to be current with the latest in our own fields. And that benefits everyone that we come in contact with. It benefits the docs who know that they are getting the latest and most accurate information. It benefits the patients who can be assured that the laboratory practitioners will be able to help them. And frankly, as was mentioned just a minute ago, it benefits the institution because this institution can offer a wide variety of services, knowing full well that the information that is garnered from the laboratory will be provided by highly educated and trained individuals, you. You are entering a field at a very interesting and dynamic time. The issues facing us are everything from the expansion of our science and our knowledge, and therefore our scope of practice, which sometimes feels overwhelming, to the requirements that physicians, clinicians of all sorts, and patients have for information and explanations, which is always a challenge, and then the pressures from third-party payers, which we will not spend a great deal of time with, but I can promise you all at some point or another, you will hear about some insurance company that said that something that we researched, they're not going to pay for. So in the meantime, the science expansion is remarkable. When I started out, and you can tell by the gray hair that I am old, my first position at the VA, we were doing electrophoresis on paper, okay? And we saw 4 regions: albumin, alpha, beta, gamma. That was it. And then we went to cellulose acetate, and oh my gosh, there were a couple of little extra groups in the alpha and beta region. Wow. And then we went to this huge, huge instrument. I had all this gel electrophoresis, and we found not only more subtypes of alpha, beta, and gamma, but prealbumin. Prealbumin, what is that for? Today, we do capillary electrophoresis on an automated desktop, and with that are able to identify all kinds of protein abnormalities, hemoglobinopathies, nucleic acids, anything that we need to help our patients. Genetic testing, for instance, started back when we were just looking for the couple of gene sequences or problems for chromosome abnormalities for inherited diseases like Tay-Sachs or cystic fibrosis, that kind of thing. Today, we are looking at how patients will process any drugs that are prescribed to them through pharmacogenomics, DNA sequencing, both whole and exome sequencing, and infectious agents and emerging diseases, which, from my perspective, blew the microbiologists out of the water because we thought for sure we would be culturing until the end of the world. And now, instead, we're required to learn PCR and molecular stuff, and somebody else should be doing that. This is, and let's face it, tumor markers, what we know today, what we can tell oncologists about what's going on with their patient and what is the problem, what started the problem for their tumor is amazing. Now, you do have to understand, though, that we report those results in this really cute gobbledygook that only us and a couple of oncologists really know, and that's why we are needed to answer the phone when they want to know, what does this KRAS-2, what does that really mean? Our current roles and responsibilities are being scrutinized constantly. Is it true that we're here that we won't be needed someday because everything's going to be automated and miniaturized? The answer to that is false. Every advance in automation, every miniaturization was and will be needed to accommodate the new science and the new medicine, and they will need us to do it. When I started out, we were using 2 and 4 channel autoanalyzers. That was a big deal, and we had all been doing manual methods. And so the thought was, oh my gosh, we weren't going to need that many of us. Not true, because those analyzers broke down on a routine basis, thank you, and then you had to make the reagents, and you had to then adjust what it was that you were testing as the analyzers became more prevalent. Then we went to these SMACs, which did 23 tests, and that was really fancy, guys, and 23 tests in a couple of minutes. You don't need all these people. Like, oh, yes, you do, because, again, the reagents needed to be made, the quality control needed to happen, the instrument broke down, and, of course, then there was also the idea that the reference intervals that we had before had changed because of the precision of what we were doing. And on that goes. I could go through an entire history of automated chemistry. Today we have, and you have here at Geisinger, an automated specimen delivery system and the instrumentation, COBOS instrumentation that can do 200 different tests. But still not without us. The reasons, the functions, the indications for these proteins and genetic markers will be beyond what any physician can learn in medical school in 4 years. And frankly, is beyond what some can learn even through residency, unless it's a very specific residency. I've worked with the CDC on a number of different projects. We actually did surveys of medical schools to find out how they teach laboratory medicine. And we found that there were a number of medical schools that don't really teach it as a formal program. We also found out that there were a number of schools that only teach it as an elective. They believe that they will get the information as they go through clinics, that they will absorb what is necessary for them to know as far as the laboratory is concerned. We know that that's not the way that you really learn about the pathology of medicine. And it is very, very important that we are there to help them understand all of that. In addition, we have another whole huge group of practitioners, nurse practitioners, physician associates. They are wonderful people who bring access to healthcare to the entire country that would otherwise be a problem because, like every other healthcare profession, we've all got shortages of physicians. Those individuals in many of their programs have no laboratory medicine or science lectures at all. And so they are definitely relying on us. What causes all this ruckus? It's the requirements for clinicians and patients for information and explanations, and the pressure from third-party payers. Healthcare, medicine as we used to call it before we got concerned with wellness and preventive care, and all of its professions are enjoying mystic status in this country. When hospitals were first built, they were institutions where people actually feared to go because that's where people seem to go to die. And then we learned to cure and avoid infections, and hospitals began to employ caring and dedicated professionals. Every community wanted one. And in the beginning of our profession, we were on the floors. We were in the wards because there was no laboratory as such. But of course, there were only like a handful of laboratory tests, one of which was sniffing urine, which, has its drawbacks. At least we didn't have to taste it. That was 1,000 years prior. But the fact is that it ended up that as our test menu grew, we needed someplace else to do the work because the patients didn't like looking at a Bunsen burner with gas coming out of it glowing in the dark in the middle of the night. So that's when we ended up somewhere else in the hospital, and with that, we kind of disappeared. But our contributions to the patient have never disappeared. Research has expanded our knowledge, and everyone assumed it would be for the better. And at first, most of the findings were. It was pretty clear cut. We thought cholesterol. If you had high cholesterol, you had a risk of cardiac problems. Today, we realize that it's not just your cholesterol. I, for instance, have a cholesterol that is over 200. but I have HDLs that are over 100. And so my one doctor said, you realize that that is what they call the Methuselah syndrome, that you will last forever. My children both said, you get her. However, today we also know that there's part of the HDL faction that is not as good as we thought it was, something that we never would have even considered in the past. We also know we have to do LDLs and we have to do lipoproteins and HSCRP if we really want to know what's going on with a patient. This means that there is way more information than any one person can handle, who is also got all these other issues that they have to take care of with their patients, and that's why we are the source of the information that they need. We also know that there are other pressures. We blamed, concerns about the cost of healthcare and the confusion about the conflicting research, as I mentioned. And then there's the boomers. Oh my God, the boomers. They're coming, guys. We are going to be, and are already starting to be, overwhelmed by an elderly population that is going to continue to grow in size. We insist that we're going to live long enough to drive you all crazy, and are putting healthcare in turmoil. The attitude and the education of this generation is different than prior generations, and they are shaking up healthcare to its core. If we do not learn to be more informative and consultative and collaborative, they are going to feel that we failed. This is the group that comes to their primary care doc with a stack of papers that they printed off the internet that said that they have not only probably something wrong like gout, and then they also have, and then they have this, and then, by the way, I might be dying. Those folks expect to know their laboratory results as quickly as possible, and there is a law today that requires that we in the laboratory submit to them their laboratory results as soon as they are available, with the exception of pathology, but as soon as they are available, which means they look at that, and some of them call their docs, some of them call us. And a lot of laboratorians have a habit of saying, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about that, and hanging up. They're not happy with that reaction, folks. We have the ability to have a chat with them. We have the ability to say enough to send them back to their docs, and we need to start to learn how to communicate. That's not easy because most of us who work in the laboratory and love the laboratory are somewhat introverted, and this is not our specialty. It's not mine. Believe it or not, I test as an introvert, but I have spent a great deal of time trying to overcome that because it is essential. It is essential that we talk to these patients and to our clinician colleagues. They are challenging how we practice and how we communicate. What's this all mean to you? Well, along with the responsibilities in the workplace you're having today, you're assuming the responsibilities of being a professional. We are a profession. Professions are defined as those that have clearly stated purposes and goals and operate within a specific body of knowledge, and we do that. We have skills that a practitioner has to master in order to achieve those purposes, and it's usually through education. What are our purposes? Everything from ensuring that the appropriate clinical laboratory test has been ordered, which means the pre-analytical phase, to procuring the right test samples in a timely fashion, producing the right, accurate, precise test results, correlating them, that's the post-analytical part, that we are taught, so we know how to do it, disseminating that information to clinicians and patients in a timely manner, and then looking at, and this is something that I'm very impressed with what happens here at Geisinger, looking at how we impact our patients and their outcomes, as well as evaluating how our clinical services are impacting the institution, the hospital system. How do we achieve these goals? It's way more than just putting a specimen on an instrument, pushing a button, and getting a number. It starts with the appropriate order and the appropriate processing. You have a responsibility to know the correct conditions as it pertains to the patient and the sample. You use your knowledge of test procedures and their pitfalls to reject specimens. You acknowledge the fact that physicians sometimes, but nurses a lot of times, believe that somehow we are hemolyzing specimens in the laboratory just to drive them crazy. And that is, of course, not the case, but they also want to know why we can't just run them anyway. In every instance where staff has not been educated and properly trained to handle the myriad of challenges that we face, there are problems, and lab directors find that they have to provide extensive on-the-job training and con ed to educate those personnel, or they spend their days fielding questions from irate physicians. You must put your professional knowledge to the most effective use possible and establish cooperative relationships with other professionals in the laboratory and the hospital. It is essential that we know the pharmacists, that we know nursing. In fact, in this country, in many hospitals, in many states, the laboratories have started to send individuals up to the nursing units. Now, again, folks who are willing to talk to people, not the ones of us who like to hide behind the instruments, and say to those nurses, I am your liaison to the laboratory. You have a question about anything, you call me. And I will answer the phone, and I will talk to you, and I will help you as best you can, I can, or find somebody for you. There are hospitals in Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, Georgia that are using this on a daily basis. They've been doing this for years. It is incredibly successful because it gives folks the opportunity to really know who we are and what we do. So I want you to understand that it is very, very important that you practice so that you learn from everybody on the healthcare team. Now, at some point, you need to start also participating in continuing education. And as tempting as it might be to barbecue your clinical chemistry text or shred the micro text, don't do it. Add to it instead. As you leave, I urge you to join an organization of some sort. You're going to be under incredible pressure and need the comfort of others to share that pressure, who understand who you are and your language and how you think, and who will give you unconditional support and energy. That is what a professional society does. Robert Fulham, who wrote All I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, also wrote about beginning to end rituals of our lives and said the rituals of professionals are that what they do for a living defines who they are. So I don't know about the rest of you who are in the laboratory, but I have some quirks that I know come from being a laboratory scientist. When we first got married, I explained to my husband that, the way the vacuum cleaner works best is if the bag is emptied on a routine basis. And the way to know that is I'm going to put tape on the vacuum cleaner. And when you change the bag, you will initial and date the tape so that we know if it needs to be changed. And he looked at me and said, okay, I'll date it, but initial it? There's only 2 of us in the house, for heaven's sake. Okay, fine. So then I said to him, he would ask me how my day was, and I would tell him about a really interesting gastric and the stuff that was floating in it, and that there was this particular stool sample that we got that was really cool. And he would look at me like, I'm trying to eat dinner here, Alyssa. Could you pass on that? Oh, all right, fine. But one thing I still do to this day is inventory control. We never run out of anything. And my husband believes it's all magic after 55 years. But it is because we need to never run out of anything in the laboratory, and I take that as seriously with every consumable in my house, okay? So when Robert Fulham said that we are defined by who we are, that we live by who we are, he was correct. He said we also should associate, or do associate professionals with other colleagues to get new ideas, new energy, some recreation, some renewal of self. And that's the reason for attending a meeting. So my a lack of ability to discuss what was happening in my day, because it made my husband nauseous, made me kind of feel like that, my sister was a nurse. We'd yell at each other about, do you know what your colleagues did? And she would say to me, and did you know what your colleagues did? But there was not a lot of great understanding, but, we had fun after a couple of glasses of wine. But I went to an ASCLS meeting, and at lunch, sat down at a table and didn't know anybody, okay? And one person started talking about, so we had a sputum specimen, and it had, that really long elasticity that you see in some patients. So when you put the probe in, take a specimen out, it would string like this. And then we had, and by the way, there was a patient who had been making this particular dish that uses raw fish, and she ended up with fish worms and tapeworms. And we got the stool specimens in a jar, and she didn't tell anybody until she lost enough weight to look beautiful again. Okay, but the doc is now very concerned about her. And so they're going on, and nobody said, hey, I'm eating here, stop talking. And I realized that I had found my family, my professional family. So remember that. You will always be under some sort of stress. As was mentioned, the millions of tests that we do every year take a great deal of time and take a lot out of you. And sometimes the interactions that I'm encouraging you to have with other colleagues on the healthcare team don't always go as well as they could. And so there is that stress also. But if you come to your professional family, you will be able to renew yourself, be able to understand why you're doing what you're doing. You will have a sense of belonging. Atul Gawande, who wrote about his struggles about becoming a physician in the book Complications, said that he really thought of leaving the profession until he went to an AMA meeting and realized that this was where the new and better could be found, and that he had to come back because it was a place where it was full of people who knew what it was like to do what he did and understood the way he thought and the way he wanted to think. It is a way for you to avoid burnout and to find joy even when stressed. It is a necessary part of being a professional. So congratulations, welcome to our profession. We're so proud to have you. Thank you.
And it is now, thank you very much. It is now my pleasure to introduce our faculty who are going to be handing our graduates their certificates as a recognition of your achievements, as well as a pin that has been specially designed for the Geisinger School of Medical Laboratory Science. So I'd like to welcome, am I out of order? So Rhiannon Sutliff, Julia Bell, yeah, and Amalia Early, who are going to hand for our graduates, Kendra Smith, you go ahead. Oh. You don't see anything. No, I don't. And then Anthony Nguyen. And then if Kendra, if Anthony, if you could just stand in front of the table for the obligate photo op. Yeah. And then one of the things that, of course, could not at all be possible, just gonna hit something now, were all of the medical laboratory scientists who had a extremely strong hand in their training. So more than half the amount of time that the students have spent in this program have been in the clinical laboratory, learning and honing their skills in the hands-on work that we do. And the students chose and the students nominated so many of the medical laboratory professionals who had a hand in teaching them and training them, and for their dedication, for their encouragement, for the quality of teaching that was done, for the inspiration that they provided to these students. And so they are going to be presenting those to the clinical laboratorians.
All right. So we have, first off, awardee Jessica Hufford for Blood Bank. Awardee Megan Sittler-Bodwalk, Blood Bank.
Okay, I'm going to announce for ATL, or Automated Testing Lab. So this includes the sections of hematology, hemostasis, chemistry, immunology, urinalysis, body fluids, so pretty much toxicology, the rest of the lab except for micro. And specimen processing and phlebotomy. Okay, so first we have Mark Frankowiak. Awardee Bethann Reichert. Awardee Sharon Sabia. Andy Schamberg. And for those that could not be with us, awardee Michelle Adler, Amy Christ, Anthony Halovich, Zane Hoover, Brandy Krepich, Laura Mintzmoyer, and that's it. Oh, and Wendy Welch. Oh, you here? I'm sorry, come on down. There you go. Yeah.
So I'm going to be doing microbiology and molecular, and awardee Lauren Ilglin. So the rest of micro and molecular were not able to make it, but I'd like to announce their names. Nominee Miranda Becker, nominee Darren Bettinger, awardee Steve Kreis, awardee Mindy Lebenfinger, awardee Marcia Long, and nominee Twinkle Vijayan.
Thank you. So the students will stay here for just a moment, and I also wanted to welcome Dr. Chris Perillo, who wanted to say a few words with the customer service and the education service that our laboratory system offers.
This one's on. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I can't say how proud I am of Dr. Downs and the faculty and our wonderful laboratory staff that really made this program happen. Being our first year, with our doors open and students enrolled, I'm standing here today and I'm extremely proud to say that Kendra and Anthony, you've put us on the map. I'm so eager to see what you do in this field going forward, and I've had the opportunity to support our School of Phlebotomy over the years, and I can't say how proud I am to now say we have graduates from both the School of Phlebotomy and our School of Medical Laboratory Science. So thank you all again for coming to help us celebrate this wonderful achievement and this milestone in these two very esteemed colleagues now in the field of medical laboratory science. So thank you.
And I just wanted to say a few words for all the people who have been involved in the school with teaching and preparing and training. You all have been such wonderful help and support for Anthony and I through this process. So thank you so much for being here, sharing your knowledge, and celebrating with us today. I appreciate all of you.
Use counter if that's okay. Okay. It's on. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Hi everyone. It's been an amazing year. It's been the most stressful year for me, being bombarded with all the info from different departments. But I really enjoy it though. It's something I've been wanting to do for so long, and I can't believe I'm here. And also working with everyone, the professors, the lab instructors, faculty, doctors, my classmate. Everyone has been very supportive, and I really felt respected the whole time. No words can express how thankful I am to everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Stay here. And so as their final steps into the profession, I wanted to lead them in the pledge to the profession from the American Society for Clinical Pathology. Now you're holding my only copy. I did not memorize it. So I did not do the homework, I apologize. So, as a medical professional, I pledge to uphold my duty to the patients, the profession, and the society by placing patients' welfare above my own needs and desires, ensuring that each patient receives the care that is safe, effective, efficient, timely, equitable, and patient-centered, maintaining the dignity and respect for my profession, promoting the advancement of my profession, ensuring collegial relationships within the clinical laboratory and with other patient care providers, improving access to laboratory services, promoting equitable distribution of healthcare resources, complying with laws and regulations protecting patients from others incompetent and or illegal practice, and changing conditions where necessary to advance the best interest of patients. And so Thank you both. You have done a tremendous job, and you will go very far and as far as you want to, because you have that potential and you have already achieved so very, very much. So thank you. So we have another round of applause for our graduates. And with that, I wanted to welcome Dr. Myra Wilkinson with some final remarks.
Okay, so I am officially declaring 2024 a successful year for the laboratory, right? I was one of the most vocal people when they decided to close the original medical technology program, because before I was a physician, I was also a medical technologist and worked at Charleston Area Medical Center in West Virginia. So it was like a stab through the heart when we closed the program. But that was the trend in the 90s. It wasn't just lab, it was radiology programs, it was pharmacy technology programs. A lot of nursing schools closed. That was the trend. Healthcare was broken, they were going to fix it by not educating more people. It made no sense. But so here we are. So this is truly successful. It was a lot of effort, a lot of people to bring this together. And now we have something to celebrate. And so I just want to leave you with one story about a technologist in our laboratory. She's retired now, so I can talk about her. So we went to church together down here at Shiloh UCC on Bloom Road. And at the time, Shiloh decided that they wanted to get involved in international missions, and we had a chaplain here from Kenya who was going through, he was actually a bishop in the Anglican Church in Kenya, and he wanted to come here to learn chaplaincy because there's no infrastructure or social support in Kenya, and he felt that the church should play that role in this society to try to bring help to people, everything from social work to taking care of orphans to health care, whatever. So he came to Geisinger to do the chaplaincy program. So Diane and her husband decided to go on one of Shiloh's mission trips to Kenya. And there were two British physicians who, now Kenya, remember, is a former British colony. So two British physicians had decided their lifelong dream was to retire to Kenya and start a free clinic. And so they said, okay, how can we, so Diane, so of course this is a hospital town, right? So how could we support that? Most of the people who were going on the trip worked in healthcare, worked for Geisinger. And then one of the guys who was also on the trip, he ran the local Red Cross chapter. And so they were trying to figure out ways to help. So Diane started looking around the lab, said, what could we do to support this little clinic? And we had several old AO microscopes. Now, these are the old gray ones. By that time, we had pretty much quit using them in the lab, but we had a few sitting around just collecting dust. And it's always, do we throw them away? Do we give them away to a high school? Whatever. So she said, can I have one of those to take to this clinic because they don't have a microscope? I'm like, sure, why not? We're not going to use it ever again. In order to get it into the country, because Kenya is no longer a British colony and there's a lot of corruption, they had to disassemble it. Everybody had to take different pieces of the microscope, so they couldn't figure out that they were smuggling a microscope into the country. And then she was going to have to put it together again once she got there. So they did that because otherwise the government would confiscate it and it would never be seen wherever it was intended to go. So they took the microscope, but before they ever got to the clinic, they got to this other little first aid station. And when they went to that first aid station, they had no major medical equipment. So they could only be a first aid station. What they really wanted to do was to be able to upgrade to be a dispensary, which is the British term for pharmacy. And they wanted to be able to give people malaria prophylaxis because malaria was such a huge problem in that population and a high childhood mortality rate because of all the anemia. And so she found out that a microscope counts as major medical equipment. And if she left that there in that little first aid station, they could upgrade to be a dispensary and give people their malaria prophylaxis, which only costs a couple dollars a week. But those people can't afford that. So she left the microscope there and it never made its way to the British clinic. But I think we found another microscope later that we sent over on a Red Cross shipment so that nobody would steal it. But that made think of the huge difference it makes in people's lives just by her thinking, I'm a medical technologist, we've got this old equipment laying around, why can't I give that to somebody and help somebody out? So you can make a huge difference in ways that you never even think about, because she had the knowledge to be able to put it back together when she got there too, and to show somebody how to use it. And imagine if they'd had a medical laboratory scientist attached to the scope too, what you could have done with it. They would have been the best lab in the country probably, just from one well-trained technologist. So the point of the story is you never know how we're going to affect people. I know that everybody says, oh, you're in the lab, you don't ever see people unless you do phlebotomy, maybe some sweat chloride testing. Otherwise, people don't know who we are. But actually, we can still find ways to affect people in ways that we don't imagine and really contribute to their health and well-being, to a person and to a population, in this case, an entire village. Was going to get their malaria prophylaxis because of a microscope we were going to throw away, got given to them. So find ways to look for joy in your job and find ways to use your knowledge and skills that people can't even imagine that you have that will affect them in so many other ways that aren't even related to work, but you have that knowledge now to think creatively. A lot of people don't have the scientific mind to be able to think like that, like, oh, if I do this and swap that around, we can make something happen here. So again, congratulations to the entire lab. This is a successful year for us again. I'm so happy and so pleased that we have 2 new colleagues, and it's a reflection on us that we've been able to get this up and going, and a great reflection on them for making it through the program. I know personally how hard it is to get through that year. So, and Alyssa was right. If you do decide to go to medical school, you won't have to take any other prep classes. You've already done it all. So I didn't have to take any other classes to go to medical school. Congratulations to you and to the rest of our faculty. And with that, it's time to celebrate.
Yes, thank you so much. And we do have some refreshments up above that we would love for you to join in congratulating our students and partake with. Thank you.